On a desolate stretch of highway in small town, two off-duty policewomen pull into a rundown gas station for a quick stop. But their quiet break is shattered when the roar of motorcycles pierces the night. A gang of bikers storms the lot, their tattoos and leather vests marking them as predators. As threats escalate and fear grips the cashier, two policewomen step forward, calm, steady, and unyielding. What the gang doesn't know is that these two women aren't ordinary travelers, they're trained to fight. And tonight, they're ready for battle. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the desolate highway that cut through Rivertown, Mississippi. The hum of tires on cracked asphalt and the faint chirp of crickets were the only sounds filling the evening air. Alicia Carter, a black woman, gripped the steering wheel of her black Dodge Charger, her sharp eyes scanning the endless stretch of road ahead. The car's dashboard glowed faintly, highlighting her focused expression and the faint scar above her right eyebrow, a souvenir from her first year on the force. Beside her, Nia Thompson, her hometown sister, stretched in the passenger seat, letting out a quiet sigh. 3 days of training, and now we're back in the middle of nowhere, she muttered, twisting the cap off her water bottle. Alicia smirked, her voice calm but tinged with amusement. You'd rather be filing reports back at the station. Nia rolled her eyes. I'd rather not be stopping at sketchy gas stations at night. She gestured toward the fuel gauge, which hovered just above empty. We don't have a choice, Alicia replied, slowing the car as the neon glow of Wilson's stop came into view. The isolated gas station sat at the edge of a dirt lot, its faded yellow sign flickering, as if deciding whether to give out entirely. The parking lot was empty except for a rusted pickup truck parked near the side of the building. Looks quiet enough, Alicia said, but her instincts immediately disagreed. Years of undercover narcotics work had taught her that quiet rarely meant safe. As she pulled up to the pump, Nia scanned the area. The station's convenience store windows revealed a lone cashier behind the counter, a young woman in her early 20s with tired eyes and blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Her red apron read Lana in blocky white letters. She smiled weakly as she wiped the counter, her movements quick and anxious. I'll get the gas, Alicia said, stepping out of the car and into the warm night air. She adjusted the holster hidden beneath her leather jacket before reaching for the pump. Nia climbed out as well, stretching her legs before heading inside. She gave Lana a quick nod before disappearing down one of the aisles, her sharp eyes scanning the shelves while subtly observing the layout, habit more than anything else. The bell above the door chimed, and Nia glanced back just in time to see Lana's expression change. The smile dropped from her face as 3 motorcycles roared into the lot. Their chrome frames gleamed under the flickering lights. The lead bike carried a towering figure clad in a black leather vest covered in snake-patterned patches, the unmistakable mark of the steel fangs. Viper Black. His reputation was as brutal as his appearance. 6'4", muscular and covered in tattoos that wound around his arms like serpents. His gray beard gave him a deceptively aged look, but Alicia and Nia knew better. He was a predator, and he wasn't alone. 2 other bikers rolled in behind him. The first, Rex, wore a red bandana and a permanent sneer, a scar slicing across his cheekbone. The second, Coyote, had dark hair tied back and sharp, calculating eyes. Alicia's grip on the gas nozzle tightened as she turned toward the bikes, her posture straightening ever so slightly. She felt the weight of her badge hidden beneath her jacket and the comforting presence of the Glock holstered at her hip. Inside, Nia stepped back toward the counter, pretending to browse a rack of snacks. Her eyes locked on Lana, who froze as the men dismounted their bikes and strode toward the entrance. The bell chimed again. Viper lingered outside, lighting a cigarette despite the no smoking sign posted near the pump. He exhaled a long stream of smoke, his gaze settling on Alicia. "Nice car," he said, voice low and gravelly. "But a woman like you shouldn't be out here alone. Dangerous place." Alicia didn't flinch. "I can take care of myself." She kept her tone neutral, but her eyes stayed locked on his. Viper grinned, revealing yellowed teeth. "That's so." He took a step closer, his boots scraping against the pavement. Inside, the other two bikers spread out. Rex leaned on the counter, towering over Lana as she took a nervous step back. "How about you be a sweetheart and open that till?" he said, his voice dripping with menace. Coyote wandered down the aisles, his eyes flickering toward Nia as he picked up a can of beer. "You look like you could use some company," he said, blocking her path with his broad frame. Nia didn't react, though her right hand shifted closer to the concealed weapon under her shirt. Outside, Alicia noticed the tension building inside. She forced herself to stay calm as Viper moved closer, circling her like a shark. "How about you put the pump down and let me give you a ride instead?" "No thanks," Alicia replied, stepping back just enough to give herself room to move. She could see the knife handle sticking out of his boot and something heavier bulging beneath his vest. Viper's grin faltered as the sound of the store's bell rang out again, louder this time. His attention snapped to the window, where Rex had started slamming his fist against the register. "Problem in there?" Alicia asked, her voice sharp now. Viper's eyes narrowed. "Stay out of it." Alicia didn't move. Inside, Lana's hands shook as she fumbled with the keys to the register. Rex reached across the counter, grabbing her wrist. "Stop," Nia said firmly, stepping closer. Rex turned, his sneer twisting into a snarl. "And what you gonna do about it?" Nia flashed her badge, her voice steady. "Police. Let her go." Silence hung in the air for half a heartbeat before Rex lunged, drawing a knife from his belt. Outside, Alicia heard the scuffle and sprang into action. "Let her go now," she barked, reaching for her weapon as Viper moved to block her path. He grabbed her arm, but Alicia twisted free, using his weight against him to slam him into the side of the car. Viper roared, swinging at her with a wild punch that grazed her shoulder, leaving a sharp sting. She didn't hesitate, grabbing his arm and pinning it behind his back before slamming him to the ground. Inside, Nia dodged Rex's knife and delivered a swift kick to his knee, dropping him to the floor. She pinned him, but Coyote reacted fast, grabbing Lana and pulling her close with his knife pressed against her throat. "Let him go, or she dies," he shouted. Nia froze, her mind racing as sweat trickled down her back. Outside, Alicia saw the standoff through the window, her heart pounding. "Easy," she called, her voice steady but firm. "Let's talk this through." Coyote smirked. "No time to talk. Drop your weapons or she's done." Tension hung thick in the air as Alicia and Nia exchanged a look. Both were trained for moments like this, but even training couldn't account for every variable. Alicia knew she needed buy time, because time was the one thing they needed most. And then, in the distance, the faint wail of sirens cut through the night. The sharp wail of sirens pierced the tense night air, echoing off the cracked asphalt and vibrating through the steel frames of the motorcycles parked outside Wilson's stop. The sudden noise caused Viper's head to snap toward the highway, his eyes narrowing as the flashing red and blue lights appeared in the distance. Inside the store, Coyote tightened his grip on Lana, the blade of his knife pressing closer to her throat. "Call them off," he barked, his voice raw with panic as beads of sweat formed on his forehead. "Calm down," Nia said, her tone low and controlled, though her heart pounded in her chest. Her left hand stayed raised, palm open, but her right subtly inched toward her weapon holstered under her shirt. "No one's calling anyone off. But this doesn't have to get any worse than it already is." "Shut up." Rex hissed from the floor, blood dripping from his nose where Nia had struck him earlier. His hands were locked behind his back, zip-tied with a set of plastic restraints she carried in her belt. He squirmed against them, but Nia's knee pressed firmly into his shoulder blade, keeping him pinned. Alicia, still outside, pressed her knee harder against Viper's back as he struggled against her grip. She leaned in close to his ear, her voice a harsh whisper. "You hear that sound? That's backup, and they'll be here in under a minute. You've got one shot to make this easier on yourself." Viper growled, the veins in his neck bulging as he tried to buck her off. "You think this is over? You think a couple of badges scare me?" "No," Alicia shot back. "But they scare your boys." She glanced through the window just in time to see Coyote flinch at the sight of the approaching lights. "And right now they're cornered." "You really think they'll keep their mouths shut once they're in cuffs?" Her words struck a nerve. Viper froze for half a second, his breathing heavy, and Alicia knew she'd gotten into his head. Inside the store, Coyote's eyes darted wildly between Lana and the flashing lights that were drawing closer. He tightened his grip on Lana, who whimpered softly, her eyes squeezed shut. "Get up," he barked at Nia, gesturing with the knife. "Now." Nia raised her hands slowly and stood, keeping her body between him and the exit. "You're not walking out of here with her," she said firmly. "The hell I'm not." Coyote snarled, pulling Lana a step closer toward the door. Suddenly, Alicia's voice rang out from outside. "Coyote." "Drop the knife and let her go." Coyote turned his head toward the sound, and in that split second, Nia struck. She lunged forward, knocking the knife aside and grabbing his wrist. He stumbled, releasing Lana, who fell backward and scrambled toward the corner of the store. "Run, Lana," Nia shouted, twisting Coyote's arm and forcing him to drop the blade. She shoved him toward the ground just as Alicia burst through the door. Coyote scrambled to his feet, only to find himself staring down the barrel of Alicia's Glock. "Don't move," Alicia barked, her voice sharp and unyielding. Outside, the sirens grew louder as two police cruisers skidded into the lot, their tires kicking up dirt and gravel. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, shouting commands as they surrounded the building. Viper, still pinned by Alicia earlier, finally gave up his struggle and allowed the responding officers to haul him to his feet. Rex, bleeding and furious, was dragged outside and shoved into the back of a patrol car. Coyote, seeing no way out, dropped to his knees and raised his hands, his face pale and defeated. Alicia kept her weapon trained on him until two officers cuffed him and escorted him outside. Nia helped Lana up from the corner, gently guiding her toward the group of officers. "You're safe now," Nia said softly, though her adrenaline was still pumping. Lana clung to her, tears streaking her face as the reality of the situation hit her. Outside, the officers secured the scene, searching the motorcycles and recovering several weapons, including an illegal sawed-off shotgun and a duffel bag stuffed with cash and narcotics. Alicia and Nia stood by, their expressions still sharp as they debriefed the officers. "These guys weren't here by accident," Alicia said, her eyes sweeping over the scene. They were using this place to move drugs. This stop was just supposed to scare Lana into silence or worse. Nia nodded, her jaw tightening. Well, now it's over. And we've got enough evidence to put them away for a long time. One of the responding officers approached, holding a notebook. We ran the plates. 2 of the bikes are stolen, and the 3rd belongs to a known associate of the Steel Fangs. We'll get them processed downtown. Alicia and Nia exchanged a look, both of them knowing this bust was bigger than they had anticipated. We'll head to the station, Alicia said, already planning out the reports they'd need to file. Before they left, Lana approached them, still shaken but steadier now. Thank you, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. If you hadn't been here. But we were, Nia interrupted gently, and now you're safe. Lana nodded, her eyes brimming with gratitude. As the officers loaded the bikers into patrol cars, Alicia and Nia lingered for a moment, watching the scene. The bright red and blue lights flashed across their faces, illuminating the quiet determination in their eyes. This could have gone bad, Nia said finally. But it didn't, Alicia replied, because we didn't let it. They turned back toward their car, both aware that their night wasn't over yet. Reports had to be filed, evidence cataloged, and statements taken. But as they drove away from Wilson's stop, leaving the chaos behind, both women knew they'd done their jobs and done them well. The fluorescent lights in the police station buzzed softly as Alicia and Nia stood by the evidence processing desk. The tension from earlier had begun to dissipate, but adrenaline still hummed faintly beneath their skin. Their uniforms were slightly scuffed. Alicia's sleeve had a tear near the tether where Viper's knife had grazed her, and Nia's wrist was reddened from deflecting Coyote's blade, but both women carried themselves with the same composed confidence that had gotten them through the night. On the desk in front of them lay the haul from the bust, several knives, a sawed-off shotgun, and a duffel bag stuffed with bricks of heroin and bundles of cash. Officer Richards, who was cataloging the items, whistled low under his breath. These guys weren't playing around, he said, flipping open a wallet pulled from Rex's pocket. Fake IDs, stolen credit cards, and he held up a folded piece of paper. Addresses. Looks like drop points for deliveries. Alicia and Nia exchanged a look. They weren't just small-time thugs, Nia said, her voice low. This is organized. Alicia nodded. And if those drop points are active, it means more of their crew is still out there. Before they could discuss it further, Captain Ramirez appeared in the doorway of the squad room, his imposing frame cutting a shadow across the floor. He beckoned them into his office. Inside, the air was heavy with the scent of burnt coffee and paperwork. Ramirez leaned back in his chair, the lines on his face deepening as he rubbed his temples. I just got off the phone with the FBI, he said, his tone measured but tense. Those 3 bikers? They're tied to the Iron Reapers. You 2 just knocked over one of their transport crews. Nia frowned. The Iron Reapers. I thought they ran guns and extortion, not narcotics. They diversified, Ramirez said grimly. And tonight you put a big dent in their pipeline. He gestured to the duffel bag of heroin sitting on his desk. This shipment was supposed to move through Atlanta and out to distributors across 3 states. The fact that you intercepted it means they're hurting, and that means they're going to retaliate. Alicia crossed her arms. Let them come. We'll be ready. Ramirez gave her a hard look. I have no doubt about that, but I need you both sharp. You're not dealing with street-level punks anymore. The Reapers are vicious, and they don't leave loose ends. Nia's jaw tightened, her mind flashing back to Lana trembling behind the counter. "We're not letting them scare us off," she said firmly. Ramirez's expression softened slightly, pride flickering in his eyes. "I didn't expect you would," he said. "That's why I'm putting you two on the task force. Effective immediately. FBI sending an agent down tomorrow to coordinate." The words hung in the air for a moment before Alicia finally spoke. "We'll handle it, Captain." "Good." Ramirez stood, signaling the meeting was over. "Go home, get cleaned up. I want you both sharp in the morning." The ride home was quiet, save for the occasional hum of the engine and the distant murmur of the police radio. Alicia drove while Nia stared out the window, her thoughts replaying the night's events. "You okay?" Alicia asked, glancing over briefly. "Yeah," Nia said, though her voice lacked conviction. Alicia didn't press, but after a moment Nia spoke again. "I just keep thinking about Lana," she admitted, "and how close it came to going wrong." "It didn't," Alicia said firmly, "because we didn't let it." Nia turned to her, finally meeting her eyes. "What if next time we're not fast enough?" Alicia took a breath, her grip tightening slightly on the wheel. "Then we make sure there isn't a next time." The next morning the precinct was buzzing. The bust had made headlines, and local reporters crowded outside the entrance, their cameras flashing as Alicia and Nia slipped through the side door. Inside, Ramirez was already in a meeting with Agent Daniel Parker from the FBI, a sharp-dressed man in his early 40s who exuded authority. "Detectives," Parker greeted them with a firm handshake. "Hell of a night you two had." Alicia raised an eyebrow. "You're not here just to congratulate us, are you?" Parker smirked. "No. I'm here because your bust just blew the lid off an ongoing federal investigation. We've been tracking the Iron Reapers for months, but this shipment you intercepted." He pointed to the evidence photos on the board. "That was supposed to finance their expansion. You hit them where it hurts." "And now they're coming after us," Nia said. Parker nodded. "Which is why we need to move fast. We've got search warrants for the drop points you found, and we're more mobilizing teams now. I want you both on the front lines. Your instincts and experience are what got us this far." Alicia glanced at Nia. "We're in." By midday, the operation was in motion. SWAT teams prepped their gear, and unmarked cars rolled out from the precinct, heading toward the addresses tied to the Iron Reapers. Alicia and Nia rode together, their eyes scanning every car and pedestrian they passed. "This isn't over," Nia said quietly, her hand resting on her holstered weapon. "No," Alicia replied, "but it will be soon." They didn't know what they would find when they reached their targets, but one thing was clear: this fight was far from finished. The sun had barely risen when Alicia and Nia arrived at the first drop point, a rundown auto repair shop on the outskirts of Atlanta. The building sat isolated, flanked by rusted cars and stacks of old tires, its faded sign barely legible. SWAT teams were already in position, their armored vehicles parked along the alleyways and back exits to cut off any escape routes. Agent Parker stood near the lead vehicle, his eyes locked on the shop as he reviewed the final details with the tactical team. "You two ready for this?" Parker asked as Alicia and Nia approached, their bulletproof vests secured over their tactical uniforms. "Born ready," Alicia replied, checking the slide of her Glock before holstering it. Nia gave a sharp nod. "Let's finish what we started." Parker gestured toward the team leader, signaling it was time. "You're with me," he said. "We breach on my mark." The sound of the battering ram echoed through the lot as the reinforced door flew open. SWAT poured in first, shouting commands and clearing each room with precision. Alicia and Nia entered behind them, moving quickly through the dimly lit garage, their weapons raised. The smell of oil and burnt rubber lingered in the air, mixing with the sharp tang of adrenaline. "Clear left," shouted one of the SWAT officers. "Clear right," another called out. Alicia's eyes scanned the area, landing on a metal staircase leading to an office above the garage floor. She motioned to Nia, and they moved in tandem, their boots clanking softly against the steps. Upstairs, the office was cluttered with stacks of papers, duffel bags, and loose cash. Maps and schedules were pinned to the walls, marking delivery routes and storage sites. Nia approached a desk, rifling through the papers until she froze. "Alicia," she said, holding up a ledger. "This is it. Names, dates, amounts, it's their entire operation." Before Alicia could respond, gunfire erupted below. "Shots fired," came a voice over the radio. Alicia and Nia rushed to the railing, looking down as SWAT officers took cover behind vehicles, returning fire at a group of men barricaded behind tool cabinets. The bikers were cornered but fighting desperately, their bullets sparking off metal surfaces. "Stay low," Parker barked through the radio. "We need them alive." Nia spotted one of the bikers' Viper firing wildly before ducking behind an engine block. Her pulse quickened as memories of their confrontation at the gas station flashed through her mind. "He's mine," she said, already moving down the stairs. The fight on the garage floor was chaotic. Nia slid behind a car, trading shots with Viper, who had taken cover behind a tool bench. Alicia flanked around the other side, her eyes scanning for openings. "Viper," Nia shouted, drawing his attention. "It's over. Drop the gun." "Not a chance," he barked, firing another shot that ricocheted off the car's hood. Nia took a deep breath, focusing as the world narrowed to the sound of her heartbeat. She waited for the pause between shots, then moved quick and low, closing the distance before Viper could react. She grabbed his wrist, twisting sharply until the gun clattered to the floor. Viper snarled and swung at her with his free hand, but Nia ducked, driving her knee into his ribs. He staggered back, clutching his side, but still reached for a knife strapped to his belt. Before he could draw it, Alicia appeared behind him, her weapon aimed at his head. "Don't," she said coldly. Viper froze, his eyes darting between the two women. With a growl of frustration, he dropped the knife and raised his hands. Outside, the rest of the bikers had been subdued. Coyote and Rex were dragged out in cuffs, their faces bloodied and defeated. SWAT officers secured the scene while Parker examined the evidence. "This is bigger than we thought," he admitted, flipping through the ledger Nia had recovered. "We've got enough here to bring down the entire supply chain." Alicia and Nia exchanged a look, exhausted but satisfied. "What about the rest of the Reapers?" Nia asked. Parker's expression darkened. "We're just getting started. But thanks to you two, we have the leverage we need to finish this." Back at the precinct, the mood was triumphant. Officers cheered as Alicia and Nia walked through the bullpen, their faces lighting up with pride. Captain Ramirez stood by his office door, clapping them on the shoulder as they passed. "Hell of a job out there," he said. "You two just shut down one of the biggest pipelines in the region." Nia smirked. "All in a day's work, Captain." Ramirez grinned. "Yeah, well, don't get too comfortable. The paperwork's waiting." Later that night, Alicia and Nia sat in the dimly lit break room, their coffee cups steaming as they finally allowed themselves to relax. "You think this is really over?" Nia asked, her voice quieter now. Alicia leaned back, her gaze distant. Not completely. The Reapers might be finished, but there's always another crew waiting to step in. Nia nodded thoughtfully. Then we stay ready. They clinked their cups together in silent agreement, the weight of the night beginning to lift as they looked ahead to whatever challenges might come next. The flashing red and blue lights illuminated the dark highway as more patrol cars arrived at Wilson's stop. Officers poured out, weapons drawn, quickly securing the perimeter. Alicia stood with her gun still raised, her breathing heavy but steady as the chaos began to settle. Nia had her knee firmly pressed into Rex's back, pinning him to the ground as she snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Nearby, Coyote groaned, clutching his bleeding arm as two officers restrained him. Viper, still face down on the floor, growled in frustration. His cheek pressed against the cold tile, his cocky demeanor now shattered. Alicia pressed down on his shoulder to keep him still. "You messed with the wrong people tonight," Alicia said, her voice sharp but calm. "You think this is over?" Viper hissed through clenched teeth. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." Alicia leaned in closer. "I know exactly who I'm dealing with, a gang of cowards who prey on innocent people and think they're untouchable. Not anymore." The aftermath unfolded quickly. Officers searched the bikers' motorcycles and vehicles, turning up bags of methamphetamine, unregistered firearms, stacks of counterfeit cash, and burner phones. The evidence painted a clear picture. Steel Fangs wasn't just a local gang but part of a larger drug trafficking network spanning multiple states. Agent Parker arrived shortly after, taking charge of the investigation. He approached Alicia and Nia, who were giving statements to one of the deputies. "You two just cracked open something bigger than we ever expected," Parker said, holding up a Ziploc bag filled with fake IDs. "This isn't just drug running. These guys are tied to weapons smuggling and money laundering. This ledger we pulled from Viper's bike has names and drop points all over the state." Alicia glanced at Nia, who raised her eyebrows. "Looks like we just made someone's job a lot harder," Nia quipped, wiping the sweat from her forehead. Parker grinned. "And mine a whole lot easier." He looked at Lana, who was sitting in the back of an ambulance, a blanket draped over her shoulders. "She's going to be crucial. If we can protect her and get her testimony, we'll be able to bring down the rest of this operation." Over the next few days, the investigation moved fast. With the evidence collected at the scene and testimonies from Lana, Alicia, and Nia, warrants were issued for several known associates of the Steel Fangs. Raids were conducted across Rivertown and neighboring counties, leading to the arrest of 15 more members. A warehouse on the outskirts of the city, one of the drop points listed in Viper's ledger, was found to contain crates of illegal weapons and over $200,000 in cash. The bust made headlines, with Alicia and Nia at the center of the story. In the precinct, Captain Harass stood before his officers, the atmosphere buzzing with excitement. "I want to personally thank Detectives Carter and Thompson for their quick thinking and bravery. Their actions not only prevented a robbery and potential homicide, but also dismantled a dangerous network that's been plaguing this region for years." The room erupted in applause. Alicia smiled humbly, but Nia nudged her. "Come on, you can enjoy the spotlight for 5 seconds." Lana's life changed after that night. She testified against the Steel Fangs, helping seal their convictions. In return, she was placed in a witness protection program until the trials were over. The town rallied around her, offering support, and her courage inspired others to speak up about crimes in their neighborhoods. Several months later, Alicia and Nia met Lana at a new job, a cashier at a busy diner near the police station. She looked more confident now, her eyes no longer carrying the fear they'd seen that night. "I can't thank you enough," Lana said, placing a cup of coffee in front of Alicia. "You saved my life, but more than that, you gave me the strength to take it back." "You did the hard part," Nia replied with a smile. "You stood up and fought." The trials of Viper, Rex, and Coyote were swift and decisive. Viper was sentenced to 25 years for drug trafficking, weapons possession, and attempted murder. Rex and Coyote each received 15 years, with no chance of parole for at least a decade. The collapse of the Steel Fang sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. Their downfall was a message law enforcement wasn't backing down. Agent Parker later confirmed that Alicia and Nia's actions had indirectly led to the arrests of several higher-ranking figures in the organization. Back at the precinct, Alicia and Nia sat in the locker room, finally allowing themselves to relax. The adrenaline had worn off, but the sense of accomplishment lingered. "Think this will make it into the training manuals?" Nia joked. Alicia smirked. "Only if they leave out how I let Viper scratch me." She rolled up her sleeve, revealing the bandage on her arm. "You still took him down," Nia said, standing up and grabbing her gear. "Next time, though, let's try not to make national news. I'm getting tired of reporters calling me." Alicia laughed, but her expression softened as she looked out the window, the sun setting over Rivertown. "You know, for all the chaos, I wouldn't change a thing." Nia nodded. "Neither would I." As they walked out of the precinct, their badges catching the last rays of light, they knew this was just one battle in a long fight, but it was a battle they had won, and they were ready for whatever came next.